قال الإمام الشافعي رحمه الله ما جهل الناس وما اختلفوا إلا لتركهم لسان العرب وميلهم إلى لسان أرسطاطاليس. Imam al-Shafi'i, he said, people only became ignorant and divided when they abandoned the Arabic language and turned instead to the language of Aristotle. Now this means that people lost knowledge and unity when they stopped learning the Arabic language and instead they started depending on languages like Greek. Now why is this quote so important? Because if you try to understand Islam deeply, beyond the surface level without Arabic, you're basically putting yourself in danger and in danger of misunderstanding the Qur'an and the Sunnah basically. And over time, that can lead to mistakes in religious matters, rulings or innovation, bid'ah, or even leading you to sectarianism or, firqa and becoming part of a sect. And that is why Imam Malik ibn Anas, he said, لا أتي برجل يفسر كتاب الله غير عالم بلغة العرب إلا جعلته نكالا. Imam Malik ibn Anas, he said, if someone interprets the book of Allah without knowing the Arabic language, I will make him an example for others. Meaning I will punish him harshly. Likewise, Imam Mujahid ibn Jabal, Imam al-Tabi'i al-Mufassir, he said, لا يحل لأحد يؤمن بالله واليوم الآخر أن يتكلم في كتاب الله إذا لم يكن عالما بلغات العرب. Imam Mujahid, he said, which is one of the greatest, mufassirun of tafsir, he said, it's not allowed for anyone that believes in Allah and the day of judgment to speak about the book of Allah without knowing the languages of Arabs. Now, in those times, they were different qaba'il, different tribes of Arab. They were all fusha in classical Arabic, but there was different tribes. Hence why we have different types of recitations based on all of these different lughat, all of these different languages that the Arab had at that time. So the point that we are trying to make here is that, look, Arabic, if you're a Muslim, it's not just a language, it's not a communication tool. Because the Arabic language, and كَفَى فَضْلًا أَنْ اخْتَرَاهَ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ لِوَحْيِهِ, is enough of an honor that Allah Azza wa Jal chose this language for His revelation. So it's the language of the Qur'an, the language of the Sunnah, and the language of the works of the early scholars, the first 3 generations. Without Arabic, you cannot fully understand Islamic texts or deep sciences like fiqh or usul al-fiqh or mustalah al-hadith, ilm al-rijal, and get deep and deep and deep and deep in the different subjects of al-Islam that gives you more understanding in depth of al-Islam. So if you only rely on translations, you miss the richness and precision of the original meanings from the Qur'an and the Sunnah. And worse than that, you might interpret text with your own culture or language or even own experience or feelings, which can lead to serious mistakes later on in belief and therefore in practice, which then leads you to be part of a sect. And that's how the sects of al-Islam started widespreading in the community of al-Islam. So when Imam al-Shafi'i, he mentioned the Aristotle and the language of the Greeks, he meant by the Greek philosophy and the logic and metaphysics and rational thinking that these people had. Some Muslims in the past started studying these works of the Greeks and Stoicism and all of these things, and they tried to apply these things into the Islamic beliefs and their practice. And this was a problem. Why? Because instead of following the clear teachings of the Qur'an and the Sunnah, some people started asking too many philosophical questions. Like, well, if Allah created everything, why would Allah create evil? Doesn't that go against His attribute of fairness? And therefore, different sects like Mu'tazila and different sects like that of al-Islam started to widespread in the community. So this rationalist thinking went against the submission to the revelation of Allah Azza wa Jal, just which was the manhaj, which was the methodology of the companions of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, where they said, Sami'na wa ata'na. We have heard and we have obeyed and we have applied it. So the Prophet ﷺ already warned us that this ummah would divide in 73 sects and only one will be saved, which is those that follow what the Prophet ﷺ and his companions were upon back then. And you know, even in the past, it happened that some scholars, they gave opinions, fatwas, based on the environment and based on their own experiences, just because of the fact they maybe didn't have access to the actual works and the actual sayings of the first three generations. Just like it happened, for example, in Al-Andalus with Imam Ibn Hazm in related to the music and how relaxed he was towards music. But the thing is that if you look into his environments at that time and the culture he was in and so on, and how music was widespread, it only makes sense that his opinion was so different than the vast majority of the rest of the scholars towards one particular thing, in this case, the instruments and music. So Al-Imam Ibn Hazm, perhaps he didn't have access to the works of the early generations and their scholastical works towards understanding why, music is haram in Islam. And this is why you have to learn the Arabic language, because if you don't have access to the actual sources, you start relying on other sources of knowledge. And sometimes instead of knowledge, it becomes experiences, feelings, your own thinking, your own logic, or wherever you lean towards. It could be personality, it could be, your ethics and what's known in your cultural environment. Now, in this case, you have access, and the books now have been laid out. Even in the days we live in, you can even search online and have access directly to the works of the first three generations. You don't have to do like many scholars where they had to like literally make up their mind about a particular topic based on what they know and based on what they have access to. And again, it needs to be in the Arabic language. Just like Imam Malik, he said, based on the qawl that we read, that if a man, translates or interprets the tafsir of the Qur'an without the Arabic language, not being in the Arabic language, I will punish him in front of people, like show him as an example. So it needs to be in the Arabic language. And the reason being is because there is something called untranslatability. That's what they call it, scholars of linguistics nowadays, which is when a meaning cannot be transferred with one word to another, from one language to another, which happens a lot in the Arabic language towards other languages. So you can very easily misinterpret something from the religion. And that's what happened to many people in the past in history. So this is why I am a big advocate, but rather it's my life mission to motivate you and to get you closer and push you to learn the Arabic language. So if you are serious about truly understanding Islam with its language, the language that Allah Azza wa Jal chose for it, not just on a surface level, but deeply, you must learn and begin with the Arabic language. Don't wait for the perfect time. Whatever your situation is right now is the best time, but rather the best time was yesterday. So even if you are learning a little bit on a day-to-day basis, you have to incorporate it in your life. And if you had started 3 years ago, you would have been fluent already by now, by just doing a little bit every day. So to help you with this, I want to invite you to watch 1 hour video. Whenever you have time, go ahead and click the first link in the description of this video. Is going to be a video that will show you how I learned Arabic, how my students learn Arabic, and how you can start today learning the Arabic language from wherever you are at in the world, as long as you have a Wi-Fi. And as always, my brother, I'm here to help you get closer to the source until you no longer need a translator to understand Islam. Assalamu alaikum.